All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 294 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill, admin on the KissFAQ message board. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Wees on the board. Daniel, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
And also 69th Blizzard, Ken.
Hello there.
And from the Great White North, the mighty Marcus Almighty Mark.
Hello, and it is very, very mighty cold. In your temperature ratings, it is a whopping 1 degree Fahrenheit right now here. It's not.
What the hell is that?
That's
in
really
normal
cold.
numbers.
It's like in Celsius, it was minus 21 this morning Celsius here.
Pretty cool.
Like, that's why I'm
it's
still
almost the
wearing
same
my
here.
toque.
18 minus Celsius
Yeah.
over here.
It's insane. The dog wanted to go out for a walk, and I was like, "Are you insane?" Like, I didn't want to take her out.
Be nice
Well,
to
when you see those American shows, they don't seem to understand that they need to go and you know, go out with the dogs. Oh, the dogs are pooping all over the place. No, us and those guys. What the hell you need to go for a walk with them?
Or the Kardashians, it's someone else's job to walk the dog.
Yeah, never seen that crap.
All right, what news do we have? Kiss-related news. I don't think there's a whole lot to really discuss. They're on tour. We'll cover some of the current affairs stuff during this episode of the show. Anyone had any recent purchases that they want to show off, or any things that they're waiting on?
What am I waiting on? Oh, well, I'm waiting on the 2020 tour book, Kiss tour book. I did make that purchase.
Version 5, yes. Which
Is it 5 now?
Yeah, and what was really cool that this week Andrew posted on a bunch of the kind of collectors' websites a comparison between the 5 versions so that you could look and see the differences. If you're not going to, $40 a pop, that's $200 for a complete set of 5 copies, probably a bit more to get the Japanese version imported if you really, really, really want that. But nice to see the kind of the layout changes as it's evolved. So it's cool to see that they're doing a work in progress for it. Very smart. Good business, because there are people who will buy multiples. And, I'll probably get a new one at the next show we go to. So I'm going to put my version 1 up on eBay, since it was probably the second copy ever sold.
The other thing, I found this yesterday. This is
Oh, nice.
This is from my original
Alive 2?
Alive 2 album, yeah. Obviously, it was...
Which one did you use?
3 was used. Well, I don't think I used them. I think I used them for a friend of mine. I know I did the rose first for my friend, because when we dressed up as Kiss at Halloween, he put the rose on his shoulder because he was Paul Stanley, right, for that. So, and we didn't call him the Star Child back then. We called him what he was. It's Paul Stanley, So yeah, I found this. I'm gonna stick it back. It got separated from my Alive 2 album, so I'm gonna put that back in there. Of course, I have many others of this, because I have more copies of Alive 2. I have pristine, versions of this.
So that one's near mint condition.
Yeah,
Definitely
I don't
not.
know.
Yeah, so I haven't added anything into my collection this week. One thing I have done, and this will be for the new podcast, the sidecast that we're doing, is we've got our first buttons for that show. So anyone who's on the show is getting a stack of these. Well, not a stack, 10 to start off with. And if you know them, they'll happily give you one. Or maybe they'll sell you one for like 10 cents. What other news? Sad day. This is going out of print. The time has come to take it out of circulation, so there's going to be some copies in distribution channels for a little bit, but it's the end of the road for the Gene Simmons Vault supplement. He's still doing vaults. I just had an email that, again, during the tour, you still have the opportunity, and they're doing it the same format as previous, that you basically just do your meet and greet and get the book signed with Gene and get your items signed, and then they ship you the vault, and it doesn't include any of the goodies in the secret compartment, though it still comes with the action figure or doll, whichever you prefer, the medallion, and of course the beautiful vault. So that one's, get those copies while they're still there.
I have the original copy.
Is it still?
So, I don't think it's even green. It's like a pre-copy or whatever. It's one of your very, very first.
Yeah, they're
things.
like 29 freaking printings. Come on, it's me. How many times did I edit the thing and change things and add things?
It's in my vault right down here.
Yeah.
So go look.
Yeah. I got a couple copies in my vault. Sorry, Mark.
Are there any of those still available? I've never got a copy of that. I'd wanted to get one.
They're up on. They're available
Amazon.
via Amazon, and they
Are
should
they?
have them.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll probably stay in stock for a little while. What happens when I take something out of print is I just tell the manufacturer no more sales of these, or in the case of the hardcover, no more distribution. That means I can still order hardcovers. The paperbacks are gone forever. I'll still have I've ordered a few to stick with. I've got some buttons coming in, and some of the color photo postcards that I used to include, so I'll put some premium copies up for any laggards who really, really want one that'll all come sealed and signed and all that crap, so that they're out there for a little bit longer. But that's it.
I mean, you've written so many good books, Julian. Is there one that has sold a bit more than the others, or is it just about the same, or is there one? I would say the solo albums book was like
I would
really
like
good.
to think, yeah.
I would like to have seen that getting some copies moved.
It's very difficult with the companies that I've used for printing to actually get like a proper accounting of how many copies any of my books have sold. I think from kind of the audits that I did of, in recent years, that the solo album book has been the most successful by far. The Odyssey book was a disappointment in comparison. But
really?
Again, that had so much bad mojo attached to it in the background anyway by the time it got out, and then it was released early. It was all a bit of a cluster, but also the topic, I think, was less agreeable. And then, of course, the Crazy Nights book is kind of a complete flop because people don't like the blurb on the background where I call it a failure. But then in the book, I go on to explain, that it wasn't a failure as such, but it was certainly didn't meet the expectations of Paul Stanley and what the band were aiming for. So that one's put off people from buying it just because they don't judge a book by its cover. There you go.
Kind of like the Unmasked thing, but I still think they stink a bit.
Yeah, I probably put my foot in it by writing the blurb as I did, and that's perfectly fine. Which reminds me, Odyssey's going to get a change very soon as well, because I'm coming to the end of the licensing period for the 2 photographs included in it, so I'm going to have to submit a updated version of the interior. And I swapped out an interview. I got rid of Seb Hunter's interview in later versions of it and replaced it with the Kiss Catalog Consultant interview. So a couple little changes on that. It's never ending. My books were never meant to be static, carved in stone. There are moments in time for updates. All the stuff that's in the vault book will probably go into an updated Kiss and Recordings Focus one.
Nice.
That's been out of print for years. And when you've got that and you've got everything that's come since, and a lot of the demos that have been uncovered, it's overdue, and also it needs a decent cover and just be a hardback. So
it's overdue.
Yeah. Another thing I've been wondering is is it like choosing between your own babies, or do you have a favorite yourself among the ones you've written?
I don't consider them written. I always consider them compiled. Because they're interviews. And do I have a favorite? The ones with Tim, because they were his ideas, because they were kind of his genesis and his legwork and his transcription. Both of those were a great part of history for where the FAQ was. They're very kind of melancholy or bittersweet because they're where the FAQ could have gone, had circumstances been otherwise, Odyssey, because that album meant so much to me in terms of where I was as a fan growing up, even though it ended horrendously. That's probably my favorite, and because I think there's still so much more. There could be a volume 2.
Oh, there's a lot more.
There's so much more on that one that wasn't really kind of scraped when we dug into it, even though Tim found guys like the door builder, the prop builders, and all of that.
Yeah.
I still think there are a good 15 interviews, and of course the full Bob interview that will never see the light of day, unfortunately, because of me. But there's so much more.
But do you have any more projects on the horizon, or?
Yeah, there's one you do that I'm looking forward to, actually, the Aerosmith one, right?
Yeah. But Kiss ones.
Isn't there a Hot in the
Kiss.
I thought there was a Hot in the Shade era.
I've started doing interviews for it, but whether or not it ever gets to the point where it becomes a book is a whole different matter. Whether it ever gets to the point where I've got enough of them to do an anniversary feature, it's just not as fun, kind of doing it all on your own. Whereas the ones with Tim, where he was basically doing all the real work. Come on, let's be fair. Those interviews, he tracked them down, he did them, he transcribed them, and then I came together with kind of the connective tissue. So, when there was a partnership for a common goal, doing those celebrations, it was much easier. I tried to do Crazy Nights all on my own. Doesn't quite meet the standard that Tim set. There were people missing, like Desmond, just could not get him. So, are there projects? Well, that one always sits, it's a seed. Whether it grows or becomes a weed, doesn't matter. The Aerosmith one will probably happen, but again, I'm working on interviews with people associated with the band. I've interviewed Tommy, interviewed Eric, interviewed Bruce, interviewed the guy who rejected them. But I still have a long list of people I need to get quotes from to kind of sprinkle throughout that book to make up for, some of the areas that are lacking. 1972 is horrendous. 1971 is basically fiction. From what's out there,
Sure.
You can't go back and reconstruct something. Maybe Raymond would be useful for some of that, but have to wait and see. But there are a whole bunch of drama, that band as well.
Whatever happened to Andrew's project? He seems to be doing a whole lot of different projects, but I was looking forward to the one he was, Ken, you mentioned Hot in the Shade. He was talking about doing something. There's a lot of backstage and rehearsals and stuff from that era. It would be nice to have someone like Andrew putting it together like in an hour or 1.5 hour, doing a cool video. But I haven't heard him mention it for quite a while. Maybe he's given up on it. I don't know. Have you heard anything? I was looking forward to it.
I think with a lot of things, people who work on things don't talk about them until they've actually got something, because we know how well that works out in the KISS community when you talk things up before you actually, you get crucified, especially when you start selling it.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
No.
what he said he's working on in the past. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, maybe he's working on other things. All I know is that regardless of anyone, and there are things being worked on officially and unofficially. Whether or not any of them come out that we get to enjoy is a completely different matter. So. All right, should we do a show now?
Well, maybe.
Because I am not the topic today.
Why not? It's all about Julian.
It's nice to talk about what you've done as well.
Yeah.
And it's not nice to see the wizard of wisdom is back as well. It's nice to see.
Yeah. With the Wizards shirt there.
Yeah. Looking good.
All right, so let's talk about some of the recent KISS stuff. I think since I haven't spoken enough already, I'm going to just read part of this proclamation. In South Carolina on the 11th, it was proclaimed KISS Day by the governor of that great state. And there's just a couple parts of this that I'll read. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's so pompous. Whereas rock and roll music is an inextricable part of America's shared cultural fabric. And whereas since 1974, members of the rock band KISS have traveled the world serving as preeminent American ambassadors of rock and roll. And whereas millions of concert goers in dozens of nations have witnessed what has been described as one of the greatest live concert performances and experience in history, and they need to put another comma in there. Jesus, running out of air. Whereas designated as America's #1 gold record award-winning group, Kiss has sold over 100 million albums worldwide and continues to reverberate throughout the world's musical landscape. And whereas the End of the Road World Tour marks the last Kiss live concert performance to be held in the state of South Carolina, I proclaim, and his name, sir, Henry McMaster, governor of the great state of South Carolina, does therefore proclaim February the 11th as Kiss Day throughout the state and encourage all South Carolinians to rock and roll all night in recognition of the contributions and achievements of Kiss, and recognize the role that the members of this Hall of Fame band have played in introducing the world to a uniquely American brand of music. I said I wasn't going to read it all, and then I did. Felt like I should be standing hand on heart.
Yeah.
Salute the Kiss Army. There you go.
I think I threw up a little bit in my mouth.
Yes.
It doesn't work when you talk about a rock and roll band. It's just a rock and roll band. I mean, it means a whole lot more to us. But when you do that kind of stuff, I think it doesn't work for me when they talk about rock bands as some sort of geniuses like Nelson Mandela or someone.
Doesn't that go into the face of what they've always kind of stood for, and even what Doc said, that these guys are not about a band that pushes their political things or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
Well, they made it sound so grandiose, and
It sounds like it was dictated to them by Gene.
And make sure you get the 100 million in there. #1 gold record champions. Here are the 10 bullet points that we require you. But I think that's really cool. Wherever it's done. It's cheesy. Yeah, it makes you vomit a little bit in your mouth. It's a very American thing to do these Kiss Day rather than feed the homeless. So it's cool. It's recognition. It's them on the news. It's them on Facebook. So it's nice just to share that kind of cheesiness, even if it doesn't mean a thing to you. Because Daniel's correct. I agree with him completely.
A bit of news you forgot, though, Julian, is that Kiss is going to be on, America's Got Talent next week.
I didn't miss it. It's just further down my list. But
Okay.
What song do you think they're going to play this time, Ken?
This is what usually happens. They usually play either Rock and Roll All Night or Detroit Rock City. I think when they were on there last time, they played Detroit Rock City. So maybe they'll do Rock and Roll. I'm hoping that they'll do something else.
Link it up.
A Gene
charisma.
A Gene song. A Gene. Even I guess someone mentioned "Shout It Out Loud" on the board. I thought, well, yeah, maybe that might be because they never do that.
And it's short.
Shows. And it's kind of catchy, right? So who knows?
You know what?
But we're probably going to roll.
There's probably 4 songs. Shout It Out Loud, Detroit Rock City, Rock and Roll All Night, or Lick It Up. God help us if it's I Was Made for Loving You. But I think Shout It Out Loud is actually a very good idea for that, because it's one that, again, Paul can exhort the audience and get them rowdy, get the judges shouting, or however it works. I told my wife this morning that I'm going to have to watch America Got Talent this week, and she's just rolled her eyes at me.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I did actually, and I'm not one who actually gives a shit about watching them on TV. I tuned into Judge Judy yesterday. It's on at 4:30 here.
Saw that. Yeah.
And I wanted to see who these people were who were suing one another and countersuing for slander over the costume gone wrong. Everyone who I'd seen talking about the show on Facebook was kind of mentioning one character who's got a pretty bad reputation, and I'd never heard of either of these two guys. First thing I did was just check that they're not on my friends list. Unfortunately, they weren't. But my goodness, it was epic to have the plaintiff complaining about the difference between Psycho Circus and Destroyer Upper Shells. to Judge Judy.
I'd like to see that. Someone needs to put that up on YouTube or something.
It's already been up and taken down, and it'll be up again, I'm sure. But it was actually Judge Judy's funny. She doesn't put up with anyone's shit.
Is that for real, that show? Do people do like that in America? You know, go to a judge, and she can. I mean, she's like a showman. It's like she's an artist almost when she's sitting up there. And
I think she is an actual judge.
It's like
she is.
But is it for real? It's real.
Well, it's not. It's not your real court, but it is binding because I believe, and again, I'm not going to look into it because I just don't care. I believe both parties agree to have, basically a binding decision according to the law, and she is a lawyer judge. Any of them are. So, but obviously the entertainment value is pumped up, of course, that they pick cases that are likely to have some sort of drama. But I got to the end of this episode, and it was very short. I think one commercial break, and I was just like, it lacked any pyrotechnics or fireworks. It was really pretty boring, to be perfectly honest. Both were very reasonable people, even though they'd obviously had a disagreement financially. There wasn't any, she just told one person to sit down once. So, if it's online, check it out, because it is kind of funny. But fortunately, it didn't give KISS fans a bad name.
Well, that's good.
Just kind of the sort of pathetic stuff you see elsewhere. This week also the interview with Doc McGhee dropped, and there were some parts of that, that's kind of
stirred up things.
Well, I don't know how much it stirred things up, but it was very vanilla. First
I
question.
think it was a good interview.
It was decent.
Very good interview.
No doubt about it. It's not what you're gonna. Let's make this clear. You get 10 minutes to talk to Doc. You got to be focused. You got to get your questions in. You're not going to start off with a mic drop question where he may drop his mic and walk out. You also know the role of what you want to attain. So everyone's, I'm sure, can armchair quarterback interviewing anyone. But the first question up is, what makes KISS the greatest show on earth? So that's a great question to all of you guys. Doc gave the usual sorts of fire and blood and explosions. It's not power. It's very powerful. It's not pretentious, and some people love the songs. Some people love the show. So, Ken, what's your take on what makes KISS the greatest show on earth?
Well, it's the best of both worlds, or every world, whatever you want to call it, because you got the show, of course, with the bombs and fire and lasers and stuff. Then you have the costumes, the makeup, superhero kind of thing. Alter images of real people. They're kind of these characters. And then the other is obviously the music. The music, and the music is very important, because if the music sucks, it's not going to make it. I don't care what kind of show you have. If that music is crap, it'll never last very long. Not at least 45 or over 45 years. So, and that's it. That's what makes it the greatest show on earth, because it has a little bit of everything for everybody. Old people, young people, everything. It's kind of fantasy come to life.
Nice. Mark, what would be your take on the same question?
Well, I think the answer to that has changed throughout the years, I think, because nowadays I think it's all about the show, obviously, because the performance of it has changed throughout the years. They've gotten older, but back in the Alive era and stuff like that, the show was important, but they were really raw and hungry, and they performed really good, and it was really, high energy. In the middle era, they did really good too. They had a really elaborate kind of stage setting and stuff like that. So it was about the show as well, but they still had a great element of performance to it, and the songs were really good then. A lot of people like Daniel and myself like the 80s era, and I think when they did like the Lick It Up tours and stuff like that, the show went down a notch, and as far as there wasn't as much maybe bombs or pyro and stuff like that. So they did, rely more on the songs, and the songs were excellent in that time. So I think what makes them the greatest show on Earth has changed from time to time. But, nowadays I say what makes them the greatest show is definitely the stage show. I mean, all the different things that they have on stage, all the bombs and stuff like that. Like my sister, when she went and saw them with me back, even as far back as Psycho Circus, she knew very little of Kiss, but she was thoroughly entertained because of the show. So that ultimately, is the most important. That's the selling card for Kiss, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's what brings all the not so diehard Kiss fans to the shows, is that they know they're going to have a great show. They're going to be entertained.
Quickly, Mark, the Lick It Up tour, for instance, they didn't have a lot of bombs. Well, they didn't have any bombs or fire in the Lick It Up show I saw because it was in a small theater, Berkeley Community Theater, and the fire marshal wouldn't allow them to use it. So they had to do it with just the raw energy and the music running down the stage, and they did, and that was the Lick It Up tour. And then the other thing is, for instance, like the Stone, the club. That obviously you're not going to have all that stuff in the club, and it was just like just fantastic. Even without that stuff, they were able to, at least back then, bring the energy.
Yeah, and I mean,
less energy now. I mean, they're not youngsters anymore, right?
Yeah, well, that was my point exactly, because back then, it was different. They could just go up there with just regular street clothes and play the stuff like they did in the club tour, and it was amazing. That was one of my favorite things I saw, was the club tour, shows that they did there. It was really, really, really cool. But people want to see the big show. That's ultimately what they return to. But it is interesting how Doc said, though, that it's a show for the family now. Back in the day, that term is what killed them in Dynasty, that it turned into a family kind of Walt Disney thing, that they were like, oh no, what happened to my cool leather clad band? Now they turned into like a thing where all these little kiddies are coming out to now. But now they have no issue with that. So, and that's what it's turned into, and that's fine.
Daniel, what for you?
Well, I have to agree with what Ken and Mark are saying, of course. A lot of good points. But I think another thing is that if you think about Kiss when they were at the height of their powers, I'd say somewhere in the 70s, you had 4 stars. I mean, most bands don't have more than 2 stars. But when Kiss was huge and at the height of their powers, they had 4 stars in the band. You could, I imagine you could watch Peter Criss and you knew who he was, and you were interested in him, and the same goes for Ace and Peter and Paul. Later on, it became clear that they didn't manage to find ways to create a band with 4 stars. Vinny was never a star. Eric Carr was a fan favorite, but never a star. Neither Bruce Kulick or anybody else. And not even when they put the guys in makeup, Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer. People gravitate towards Paul and Gene. But back in the day, they had 4 stars. They were all interesting. They had good stories and the mystique and all. If you look at a band like Aerosmith, I don't even know what... now I know, but back in the day, I didn't even know who the bass player was. I didn't know his name. The drummer, I didn't know it was called... What's his name? Kramer?
Joey Kramer.
Joey Kramer. He's back in the band. I saw he was out for a while, but now he's back. And I didn't know them, and they didn't look very exciting on stage. And the same goes for Judas Priest. The bass player there is solid, but he always does. Yeah. And you can pick any band, I think, and you won't find 4 stars or even 5 stars if they have another.
The Beatles. That's
Van Halen.
Yeah, the Beatles. Yeah, the Beatles, of course. Yep. But I think that was a big thing with Kiss.
Oh, yeah.
Or AC/DC. You had Cliff on one side and Malcolm on the other. And all they would do on stage was occasionally come up to the mics and then step back to the wall
I know.
of the house.
Yeah. That's great.
But that's fine. It's all different. I mean, for me, I think what makes it the greatest show on earth, it's now the show. And the soundtrack, because the energy and the performance is not, kind of what it is. But it's more... social. Again, I kind of say this in every episode. I'm congregating with people. It doesn't matter if that guy over there has a different political outlook from me, or that one has a religious issue, or that one's a vegan. What brings us all together at that show is that we all love the same music, the same band, and I find it much more unifying, and it feels good. It's like you do come in there and it's got the Disney kind of thing that you left all your crap at the door. You're not going to have someone telling you to save the rainforest, even if you know that it needs to be done. You're not going to have someone reminding you about actually, if it gets a little bit hot because of global warming and you need something to cool you down.
Nice.
So I think it brings us all together more. We don't speak the same language, but we can be at the same show singing the same words. It's much easier to do that than to go to, Baby Metal Show and try and sing those lyrics. So
there's definitely something more than just bombs and pyrotechnics. I just remember going with my girlfriend to a Kiss show and to a Metallica show, and she almost left when we watched Metallica because she thought they were boring as hell. She's not a Kiss fan, but she enjoyed herself when we watched Kiss big time. So there's something more to it.
There is, but maybe it's because we're so invested in it as well, and have been so invested in it. And even people who may be going to their first show know something about what they're about to witness, that it has a reputation, that it has kind of a history, that, these were the devils from the 80s, the protesters. There's still kind of an aura around them. But for us fans, it's still, it's like the ultimate get off work and let your hair down, that you're going, the words, the people. It's like a family reunion from hell. So I love it. Look forward to the next one. All right, let's go on to the next part of that. David Garibaldi and now David Lee Roth. I mean, Doc mentioned that he's the package guy. Well, yeah, flying and drugs. Yeah, one hell of a package guy. But obviously David Garibaldi was awesome, and I didn't know that he was going to do the first leg. I think he was always set up, but then suddenly couldn't do it. So, they got David Lee Roth in, and Doc takes value, kind of credit for bringing David Lee Roth in, wanting to give I wish he'd stop. All of these rockers would stop referring to the audience as kids. There's a lot of grandparents in the audience now.
Older than this, yeah.
Give value for money, and, Kiss doesn't play well in kind of the package deal. Well, they've done enough of that in recent years. They've done Motley Crue, they've done Aerosmith, they've done Def Leppard. So that one's kind of milked it. What's your thoughts on packages? Is that done? And is David Lee Roth good value for money? What's your perception, Daniel?
Yeah, I've been watching quite a few clips of him on live, and he's pretty entertaining. I'd watch him at a show. I'd stay and watch the opening band if he was had the opening slot. So I think he is, and he's chosen his material very wisely.
David Lee Roth or Garibaldi?
Attract a Kiss audience, the big hits. No strange stuff from his solo albums. So he works very well as an opening act. I'm not sure how much he costs. It can't be that expensive. But I never saw the Painter, but I do prefer this one in front of any Painter live. I think it was a strange choice. I mean, watching. It was such a crazy idea. Only Kiss could have thought of it. But it seems to have worked quite well, actually, the Painter stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like watching Bob Ross. Now I'm going to do some happy clouds. These are happy trees. No, I mean, David Garibaldi was performance. So, Ken, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, the package, I don't consider David Lee Roth as a package deal. The package deals are usually, either it's the big 3 to 4 bands, or a co-headlining thing, like which Kiss basically did. Well, like I said, with Motley Crue and Def Leppard and going back to Aerosmith even. Those were more of a package where they have the same amount of time on stage, same length set list, and there's one has to open for the other, but it's a package to try to bring out more fans and get them into the seats. I understand, David Lee Roth. It was a little bit late in the game, I think, getting him in there. I think it is probably helping sales, but it's just an opening act. It's not a package. But it's a good thing. I mean, I love early Van Halen, so I'm looking forward to, seeing that in a few weeks.
Agreed. I only want one song performed, and that's Unchained. And then I'll be happy.
Great song. Yeah, great song.
Mark.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the whole thing behind bringing David Garibaldi in to begin with was that it was the ideal situation for a Kiss show. No having to lug out all this gear and setting it up in front, and the sound guy having to sit there and set up a whole bunch of cues for this band and stuff like that. All he had to do was set up one microphone for him and patch in the CD player for the music, and that's it. Easy breezy, up and down, and he's out of there, and everything could be set perfectly for Kiss. So it was ideal especially if you're in a band that's toured a lot, or because I've done quite a few. Well, quite a bit of touring, and when you realize what happens in between bands in the setup and all that stuff, it can become a bit of a nightmare, and there's always some kind of technical issue. Some mic forgot to get put in, or something happened, somebody kicked something, who knows, right? But having something like that, there's never any issues. Now you have David Lee Roth and you have to set up a band, but like Ken said, I think that having David Lee Roth helps with the ticket sales. Definitely. I think there's no question in my mind about that, because there are definite people who are into the whole Van Halen thing, whether it's Van Halen proper or just David Lee Roth doing it. And I think if you're a Kiss fan who's maybe on the fence, Painter opening or Van Halen's front man, I think you would obviously go for David Lee Roth opening if you were unsure about going to the show. So I think it definitely helped on that end of things, And again, I love how Doc mentioned that he's the package guy, and now how he named off the only packages that he did like eons ago, Cinderella and this, like that was like 25, 30 years ago those packages happened. Like, come on, man, like something recent, like he really only named stuff that was back in dinosaur era. So any case, whatever, it's good though. I think this is a much better touring package than before, and Ken's right. This is not this is not an equal situation where David gets the same amount of time as Kiss. He gets like 45 minutes and that's it. But still, it's much better to have 45 minutes of David Lee Roth, I think, than having 45 minutes of painting.
Yeah, and that's really forcing David to be concise. What he's doing about 12 songs, and not getting much time to preen himself like a randy cock. Another cool part of the interview with Doc was him talking about, the last show in New York. And it was kind of framed of, is it a feeling or is that set in stone? And I must say, Doc went into politician mode, instantaneous caveat that what we believe today, is,
yes.
It's certainly the end of the road for Gene and Paul. So what does that mean, that what we believe today? I guess you got to leave it open for a possible encounter with a car wash guy.
2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we believe today, I mean, it's weird. I mean, Daniel, your thoughts on that?
Well, they might be thinking of possibilities after the tour. They still need to make money, and I'm sure they have a lot of ideas David Lee Roth even had an idea. I don't know if you read that. He thought Kiss should have 6 different bands that toured the world. And he thought that Kiss transcended music much like the Blue Man Group, and they gave some other examples. So I don't know. They sure as hell can't go on touring with Paul much more. And this is without the, farewell feeling of this tour. They would move the amount of tickets that they're doing now, and they can't get away with the same thing for a third time. So I think that will be the final show for Gene and Paul. But I'm sure they will find some way of promoting Kiss music live in some form. Whether maybe it's with different band members, but then it won't be as big, of course. Or maybe they will be using holograms, who knows? But they will come up with something, and you guys will buy it. Maybe.
I think we all will, but the South Carolina governor said it all. But let me read you that quote that was David Lee Roth in the Lexington Herald Leader, and he said, "Kiss has transcended the bias of music the way Cirque du Soleil or Blue Moon Group has. I myself would recommend to them, if in fact this is the final tour, perhaps go Blue Man Group. Why couldn't there be 6 variations of Kiss traveling on the continent? It includes so much more than just the music. It begins with the music, but extends into theater, and I'll say with respect, circus." I absolutely agree with David Lee Roth. Officially sanctioned bands. Can you imagine? Have multiple ones. You have the Dynasty era tribute band touring Australia, and then you've got the Kiss 74 Leather and Fire tour going on in the smaller venues of Europe. And then you've got maybe even the Asylum tour doing the Vegas residency. We have to remember that Kiss has transcended just being a band. And while we may have things, while we see the wheels of the car starting to rust and the body getting a bit banged out of shape as the individual members hit 70, that becoming a franchise is kind of what the band has always been about. That in the 70s, when they started thinking of buying up property, what was it, in Cleveland or outside of Cleveland for the Kiss theme park, that it's always been in the back of their mind. When they became Kiss Vegas, sure, they overextended themselves, but they didn't have 45 years of, indoctrination to become that way. So Ken, bring us the wizard's reason.
Well, if you go back, we talked about, I think we had an episode, I don't know, a couple of years back or so, we talked about Kiss 2.0, and one of those topics was about a sanctioned type band. I don't know whose idea was it, but about, multiple bands doing different kinds of shows in different eras, which was, a great idea. Now, as for Gene and Paul's, there's an N for Gene and Paul, that means at least for touring. So maybe they're not going to tour. Maybe they'll still play a festival here and there, or a Las Vegas run, possibly. Or the other thing is it's the talk of maybe Tommy and Eric will be there, and they'll bring in some new guys, and to hopefully, to fill the shoes and kind of weed. And then once that's established, then you weed out, Eric Singer and Tommy and bring in other guys. I don't know. It's kind of like, I'm thinking about, sometimes you can find people that can somewhat fill the shoes of the prior performer in a band. For instance, Bon Scott, and then you had Brian Johnson. I mean, they're different. It's just different singer, but it brought in a new era and a bunch of new fans, because it worked. They found the right guy. If they found maybe someone else, ACD found someone else, I think if they didn't pick him and they picked someone else, I think it would have gone over as well. It was just the right, again, chemistry and the right talent coming into that band. So I think it's possible. It could happen that you could get some good guys to fill in the shoes of the originals. But, remains to be seen.
Yeah, Daniel, what's your thought on that?
Well, I think Paul and Gene won't be touring anymore. That's my main point. But I'm sure they will find other ways of making money off the band, and they've surprised us before. They've come up with stuff I didn't think they would. I mean, when I saw Eric Singer in the cat makeup, I thought this ain't gonna work. But after a year or two, didn't care about it. So they are very good at coming up with new ways of, making money.
Well, personally, I think that they're right, you guys, that they're going to come up with ways. They always come up with ways to do it. I mean, Gene has 100 ideas in the morning of how to make money with Kiss's name on it. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think if they're going to find a way to move Kiss forward as a touring entity without them, that's the thing. I mean, they need to find some ways to stall a little, because I still think that they need a little bit more time for Evan and Nick there to get prepared. Because I'm still convinced they're going in. I'm convinced they're going in. Give it time. They're gonna. It's family business. This is good. They're going in. They can play, both of them. They can sing, both of them.
Jean Stoner can also sing, so maybe you put her in the band as well.
Hey,
interesting.
You never know.
She could be a female ace. Oh no, she can't play guitar.
Well, you can have a backing track.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of Priss, when we saw them perform in LA a few years ago. Yeah, that worked very nicely. Great players as well.
Yeah. So
anything's possible. I mean, this is Kiss. Nothing's impossible, and they're not afraid to fail because someone else would be footing the bill. There'll be some investor who comes in and says, "I want to do a review with the official Kiss tribute band. I want them doing the '74 set that I remember seeing. I'm retired now. I've got all this money to burn." Or there'll be someone who wants to package tributes. Can you imagine a traveling package reliving '75? So Dress to Kill set and having a Rush tribute band open.
Yeah,
that'd be
they did that. They did that here in Ontario, actually. Here, like in Brampton, where I live, they had Destroyer, which we're in their
there you go.
toque,
Okay.
actually, their tribute band. Salute to those guys. I love those guys. And they actually had a Rush tribute band open here at the Rose Theater when I went to see them.
Cool.
So it was fantastic. It was they played early Rush stuff, right? That wasn't period correct because the Kiss band, like the Destroyer, played up to like Psycho Circus stuff, and the Rush band played up to like Permanent Waves. So, but it was a cool idea of having the Rush band opening and then the Kiss band as the main thing. It was really, really good. It was a great idea.
Yeah, because then you could bring back, kind of the old hand crank, obviously with modern technology so that it actually worked most of the time. The Peter Criss's exploding drumsticks, and kind of the effects that they did legitimately for each tour with the costumes. So I don't doubt that Dave Lee Roth is absolutely right. That, it's going to be McDonaldized and franchised to the point where, different seasons will be different, treasons, different versions of the kind of the touring band with whichever, tribute act, or if they do pick, people like Evan. But I don't see that happening. I would have thought Evan would have wanted his own legitimate music career because the guy can play the shit out of a guitar,
Yeah,
But
money talks.
But can he write? Two very vastly different things, being able to play blues licks and guitar.
And playing
extremely
clubs
well.
or playing in bigger venues. What would you rather do?
Yeah, do you have the charisma and balls to get up on that gigantic stage? Because it takes a whole load to actually do it. It's one thing to be drunk at a karaoke and another to perform for people who are paying money for it. Let's move on to just a couple other sections of this interview that was, on with Doc. past members was covered, and I think that was cool that it was. I feel that Doc's a politician, and I don't believe anyone's been invited unless they actually show me video of the phone call taking place, because it's very flippant and easy to say, yeah, we've invited them all, but maybe it didn't get past Ace's manager, or maybe it didn't reach Meredith. It's easy to say, yeah, we did that. We asked them. So I would love for it to be kind of official and totally transparent, so that there is no doubt that, say, Vinny's been invited, and Vinny's thinking about it, and how would he want to participate to get that. Because Doc's saying that Gene and Paul have no problem with anyone, with history with the band to come out and be part of the celebration of the end of Kiss. But he always sort of goes back and says that it's up to them, because everyone's kind of, and he did say kind of, been invited. Well, kind of's a very big bridge. But again, as we all know, there's lots of problems of how to do it. I think the best part of what he said with that was, we celebrate them every night, and I've said that before. Mm-hmm. So Doc, you can send the check to P.O. Box. Every night that they go out on stage, and it has always been the case from 1979 onwards, they're celebrating the people who wrote that music. Mm-hmm. Except when it gets butchered by people. Dana, what's your thought on all of that?
Well, I don't think we will see a whole lot of guest appearances. Maybe for the final show at Madison Square Garden. It would make sense to bring on the guys on stage there. Bruce would do it. I know Ace would probably want some money for it. But they could give him a check and have him up on stage. But I don't really... The more I think of it, I have a hard time seeing it on stage. Bruce coming in street clothes playing. Yeah. And when most of the fans are, people who, what, a guy without makeup on Kiss stage? Who the hell is that? What is he doing there? And he's playing the Tears Are Falling solo or something. It wouldn't add a whole lot to the show for us, of course, but for the regular guy, it wouldn't mean anything. They would just think it looked strange, and so I don't think they will do it. Maybe for the final show, but not before that.
Yeah, that's actually a very good perspective. I hadn't really thought about it in those kind of terms before. Ken, what are your thoughts, especially on what Daniel's just said?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Daniel. I think that the last show is the only real opportunity to have any of those members come back. As for they're inviting them, I doubt they invited Vinny. I highly doubt that. They may have mentioned something to Ace and Peter, and hey, let us know if you want to join us for, one song, probably, right, on stage or something like that, or maybe it'd probably say Rock and Roll Night. I'm guessing that's what it would be. Yeah, for the last song. Please join us. If you would like to. You're not going to get paid anything, or very little. But, so I don't think, probably the price is not right, or we would have seen maybe them on a few
Did you
shows.
Did you see the tour with Metallica? The Big Four, Metallica, Megadeth, and mm-hmm. And they played together. And then at one point they all went up on stage and played that old Diamond Head song. And it's kind of fun, but it's hard to have a lot of bands on stage or additional members. It's not the same. Yeah,
but you know what?
It's too crowded.
It's just fun, but I don't think it works.
But you know what, though? I always think back to when Metallica did that week-long anniversary
that was
special
cool.
that they brought up a different guy. They brought Jason Newsted one night. They brought back the original guy, Ron McGovney. He went up and played bass for them once for a night. They brought Dave Mustaine up, which was a big thing at that time, that he came up and played with them. Yeah, it was unbelievable. And they did it, You know what I mean? I mean, sure, it's a bit different. They don't have to wear costumes and makeup and stuff like that, so it's a bit different. But I think anything is possible, though. I mean, if you really wanted to make it work, you can make it work. You know, the one thing that I think that you guys mentioned, though, that's very important to keep in mind is that, like Daniel said, if they brought up Bruce Kulick on stage, sure, a bunch of us, maybe like 15% of the audience will be like, yeah, that's Bruce. I can't believe he's up there. And the other 85% will be like, who the hell is that guy? You know,
you got someone from the audience.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. It just shows now how much of the audience is really more walk-up, general knowledge fans than diehard fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I think you guys are right, though, too. I mean, I don't believe for 1 minute they asked everybody to come and participate with this, because it's just too much hassle. And Doc has made a great point of mentioning it, how subtly he said it, too, to not be too insultive, how he said that Ace and them are a huge part of this band. And, that was very important, but they couldn't continue possibly with them. That last little jab in the ribs there at the end for Ace and for Peter, but I understand where that comes from. I mean, if they wanted to get to this point, the way things were going, they couldn't handle having them in the band still. So, but it's interesting, all these little points that Doc brings up. He's, like you said, Julian, he's a good politician, this guy.
Yeah, and you just raised that other point. You perceived it as a little jab. I actually didn't for once. I didn't think he was being offensive towards Peter and Ace in particular by saying that they couldn't continue on with them. I don't think any of them would deny that at the time that Peter and Ace left the band, that the band could not continue. That's why they left. So I was actually okay with that, because he didn't call them the names that have so frequently been used to describe their sins 35 freaking years ago. And have insulted sobriety, hard fought. So I didn't get upset with that part of it. But he also said, again, how the hell do you work with two catmen or two spacemen on stage? Can you be unfair to Tommy and say, stay off stage, or, take your makeup off while Ace comes on? And I don't think, both of those guys, when they left the band, they took off their makeup. So I think they don't get to reclaim that guise. But I don't think any of it's insurmountable. I think it's unlikely. You guys have already explained that most people wouldn't recognize Bruce coming up on stage in the audience. You wouldn't want to see two catmen up there. And I've talked about it before, of how I envisage it being feasible in the case of Peter and Ace, that Eric plays piano wearing his makeup, and Peter, they just move the piano back a little bit and give Peter the front of the stage, the focus, gets to throw his roses out and sing it with the rest of them in the background in their makeup. With Ace, it's the same. You have him come on and do Shock Me with Tommy. Tommy's wearing the makeup. They can have a right old guitar war, shooting missiles at each other or at the truss, wherever they want, whatever makes them feel good. So I think there are scenarios that could work, but it would take willingness on both sides. For the guys who left the band to simply admit, that's my past, that's my history, that is gone, but I still own this fucking song and can get up on stage and show you how to sing it properly or to perform it properly and show the audience, this is me. But I'm not a part of that anymore, and I'm happy with that. So
the only thing I would love to see is Bruce Kulick having the opening slot, performing unmasked material. But that again is a difficult thing to do. I mean, seeing that band performing Kiss stuff perfectly, and then having to listen to, Kiss doing it not as good. So I don't think that will happen either. Unfortunately, I think that would be really cool.
What I wouldn't mind is if on the last show they got to the last song just before the encore, and then they go off stage and come back for the encore, and then at that point, here comes Ace and Peter with at that point no Tommy or Eric Singer, but Ace and Peter come out in their costumes from whatever the past, it could be, or new, whatever. And then they play like 3 songs with that original lineup. And then the last song happens, Rock 'em All Night, and they're all out there for that. And, that's it. Send it off.
The problem is the original lineup isn't the important thing anymore. It's more the makeup. They don't add people to the shows by bringing in Peter and Ace. It's the makeup. So
I wouldn't mind. I mean, we're talking the last.
Yeah,
show.
we wouldn't mind.
We're talking the last show where the Kiss Army's going to come out for the.
They better film that fucker. That's all I'm saying. Is the last Kiss? They got to come up with a title that works for it. But you know what else I want that day? I want to have the Kissettes. I want the girls from the cover of Love Gun doing background vocals, helping out with the high parts, and I want them to go all in. Just think of that you had like 3 on either side for nice symmetry. Kind of a take it off. For a bit of a vibe going from that. That would make me really happy. Just because bands like Motley Crue had what were those girls called?
Dancers.
Bad Habits.
The Bad Habits. Okay. And to have, if you're going to have other things on stage, like have the members of the family, then have things that distract as well. Because, again, having, say, Ace come out wearing a 77 costume, or Peter coming out with his, Love Gun bandoleros and all that, the Kissettes, God, I mean, it's never going to be like Metallica's 30th anniversary, where you had all those people up on, coming up on stage. But you had King Diamond. I think he wore his makeup for that performance. So you did have one guy in makeup and everyone else out. So the big 4 ones, what was that? They jammed at the end. Was it Am I Evil?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And
good song.
9 guitars.
Yeah.
Only one was plugged in, I think, but there you go.
Yeah.
All
But I think the difference is Metallica's 30th anniversary felt genuine, sort of. It felt like they wanted to do it. All the guys wanted to do it. They wanted to become friends, and that feeling is nowhere to be found when it comes to Kiss. So you couldn't do it like that.
Yeah, there was a lot of peacemaking going on for the 30th, especially with Dave. That being the biggest kind of one that they healed over some of those wounds. You can never completely heal them. I mean, there's always going to be a scar from that sort of damage. I want to end on just one quick question. I had a whole bunch of ones, from the FAQ this week of topics. But one that should be quick to end on. And Daniel, is Love Gun the worst set opener Kiss has ever used as a song?
No. It's quite good, I think. But Creatures of the Night, Deuce, and a few others are, of course, better. But I think they've always managed to have great opening songs, both on albums and at shows. They're really good at that. And Love Gun with, all the lasers and the bombs that go off, I think it worked quite well, but not as good as Deuce or, Creatures of the Night and Deuce, I think, are the best openers. So it's not the worst thing they could open with. Love Theme from Kiss, anyone?
Have they ever opened with that?
No.
I hope not. I don't think so.
Maybe on the final show.
Ken?
No, it's not. I'm trying to think of all the openers. I mean, they did, Psycho Circus, which some could say, well, maybe not, but it still worked pretty well. I think most of the openers that they've chosen have been right on. But again, I wouldn't start off with "I Was Made for Love You." I think we discussed that a few weeks ago. But anyway,
Mark.
I don't think it's a bad opener either. But I mean, if you think about the ones that we've all named that were opening songs, then you kind of rethink about that question and say, well, is Love Gun better opener than, let's say, Creatures? Is Love Gun better an opener than, Deuce? Is Love Gun a better opener than Detroit Rock City? I think so far we'd be always saying no to all of those. So in a way, it's starting to look like it could be possibly the worst opening song that Kiss has
King
done.
of the Mountain, I think is worse. King of the Mountain they used it for, yes, in 95. Didn't they open with King of the Mountain in Japan?
No.
No.
Which one did they open with?
King of the Nighttime World.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just stuck in my
your head in asylum.
Of course, King of the Nighttime World. The one from Destroyer. I think they opened with that one in 95. No,
in Dynasty
King of
they
the
opened.
Mountain is.
They opened with that on the Dynasty tour, King of the Nighttime World.
Yeah, and in.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the worst opening.
I think that's
song.
worse.
No.
Yeah.
No, modern day Delilah. When they were being lowered to the stage,
That's
and
right.
that just repeating the riff over when it got a little slow.
Yeah, it was too long.
It's also happened with Psycho Circus when they've had to add in a few repetitions of that. But
but Deuce didn't work. Deuce didn't work when they did that as well. You know, they have played when they played the opening riff to Deuce for way too many times. So it's because it takes too long for them to roll their wheelchairs to the microphones before they can start playing. That's the problem. So, I think that's a problem because if they played Psycho Circus and Modern Day Delilah as they sound on the record, a short, edgy beginning, they work as well.
Yeah, but Detroit Rock City works very well to be extended when they need an extra, couple of seconds. I think that one is probably the most forgiving opener for the opening where they are lowered to the stage. When they just come blasting onto the stage, walking on Deuce or Modern Day Delilah in its album form, like you just said, Daniel. Yeah, absolutely, it would work fine. But again, all depends how the start of the show is. All right, let's leave all that there. That's a bunch of Somebody Get Me a Doctor, Love. Ken, nice title, by the way, that will be used. So, what are your thoughts on all of these kind of aspects of, the interview with Mitch that Doc did that came out this week and some of the other comments? Obviously, it's all about David Lee Roth, pretty much. A lot of this show today, so including his comments on multiple touring versions of Kiss. We've covered that before, as Ken said, but it becomes more of reality the closer we get to the actual end of the road. So it sounds like things are being discussed. So what are your thoughts on everything that we've talked about today? So for now, from Ken, from Daniel, from Mark and myself, thank you for joining us, and we shall see you next time. Take care. Bye now. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final, there are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.